So in this video I'm going to create a Firebase project from scratch, and then I'm going to set it up on GitLab with GitLab CI, so that whenever we push to the repository, the changes are deployed on Firebase. So let's open Firebase console, and let's create a project, and I'm going to call this imaginary project, and this is going to be the dev instance first. So I'm basically going to create two instances, one for development and one for production, and this is actually the standard that we should follow on Firebase. So let's create database, create database, next, done. Okay, so these are the default rules. Let's create a storage bucket, next, done. Okay, let's initialize hosting, next, continue to console, and the hosting is initialized. Let's set up Firebase cloud functions. Okay, continue, finish. Okay, this looks good. Now let's create the production instance. So I'm going to call this imaginary project prod, continue, and I'll just set this up really quick, the database functions and everything. And while I set this up, I wanted to say that this is in this demo I'm actually going to be using Angular, because it comes pre-bundled with end-to-end tests and unit tests. So it really, the whole process, the GitLab CI is itself framework agnostic, so it doesn't really matter whether you're using Angular or Vue or React or whatever. But I'm just going to use Angular because it's going to be quicker to set up and demo the whole process. Okay, so now we have production and we have a dev instance, imaginary project dev and prod. So let's open GitLab, and I'm going to sign in, and then we create a project. Let's call this imaginary project, and let's initialize with the readme and create. Okay, looks good. So we have our readme here, and then let's just clone this, and I have a directory called lab in my documents where I put these things. So let's see, git clone gitlab Firebase CI user imaginary project.git. Okay, so let's cd into the project, and we have our readme file here. Let's just remove this file because Angular CI is going to create its own file. So I'm going to say ng new imaginary project, and this is let's CSS, whatever, doesn't really matter. It's now installing the dependencies, and it's done. So let's see the modified files, and let's just commit them so that we can actually see that we are able to push to the repository. And git push origin master, and let's open GitLab. Okay, and yes, there we have all the files that were just created by the Angular CLI. So we're looking good. Okay, so now let's just build this project and see if it's working. So we are now building it, and it's done, looks good. And let's just run end-to-end tests. So if I specify browsers Chrome headless, it's going to run it headlessly, and watch false will actually just end the process instead of constantly looking at files for changes. Okay, so 3 tests are successful, and let's run end-to-end tests. So now end-to-end tests are running, and you'll notice that the test basically opened Google Chrome to run the end-to-end test, and this is not good, so we'll have to modify it to run headlessly. So let's cd into e2e folder, and then we have a file called protector.conf.js. we'll have to edit this. Okay, and then inside the capabilities object I'm going to have to insert another property, and it's going to be called Chrome options. And inside Chrome options we have to set arguments or args, and the argument for these Chrome options is going to be headless. So now when we run our tests, they won't open browser because inside the CI environment we cannot have Chrome running. So let's run ng e2e again. It's running. Oops, failed loading configuration files. Looks like I messed up the configuration file. Let's see what it is. Okay, I need to add a comma at the end of the project that I just added. So let's write the file again and run tests again. Okay, so now you'll notice that it didn't open Google Chrome, and this is what we want. So let's push the changes to Git again, and end-to-end test should now run headlessly. Git push origin master. Oh, git push origin master, yes. Okay, so it's pushed. Clear. Let's initialize Firebase in this project now. So Firebase init. Oh, okay, so we have to log in first. So let's log in, Firebase login. No need to collect usage information. I'm going to open this link with Google Chrome. So let's paste this, and then on the CI, okay, looks good. And now I'll run the init command again. Now this time it worked because we are now logged in. Let's select firestore, functions, hosting, and storage. So these are the mostly used, and I just initialized the project with the dev instance. And for the rest of the options you can just keep hitting enter. TypeScript probably doesn't really matter because we're not writing any script here anyway. So let's just initialize with the default options. Okay, public directory is going to be dist because we are using Angular, so Angular puts it builds in the dist directory. So Firebase use, as you can see, it's using the dev instance. Let's add the production instance also. So Firebase use add is the command to do that, and let's give it an alias of prod. So if you run Firebase use again, you'll see that the production instance is selected, and then we'll just commit these changes to the repository. Initialized Firebase. Okay, looking good. And then we'll push this, git push origin master. Okay, alright. So now I'm going to create a GitLab CI file, and let's edit this file. And first thing in the CI is an image. So since I have Angular, I'm going to be using ngCli because this image actually comes pre-installed with Angular, and this is a Docker container, so you'll have to look out, do some little bit of research if you don't know what Docker container is. Think of it as a virtual machine maybe, but of course it's much different, but the closest thing to a virtual machine. Okay, so next thing is I'm going to specify that I want some folders to be cached so that they don't get created again. So for example, node modules. So this is something that every time our container runs, it doesn't have to install all the modules again. So I would want it to actually use these folders from cache. Okay, so the node modules in our project and in the cloud functions directory of Firebase also, so we'll cache both of those. Okay, and the second thing is going to be the before script. So basically, before every time our instructions or our commands that are going to run in this, we want some commands to run like before the entire process. So one of those things is installing Firebase tools. So of course, since we're handling Firebase, so I will just install these tools. And then we're going to give a name to our pipeline. And by the way, alignment is very important in this. So remember to align things properly. And you can probably find an image that contains Firebase already pre-installed with the latest version. So really it's about playing with it. Okay, so deploy hosting to dev is the name that I'm giving to my pipeline. Let me just see if the alignment is correct. I think this before script is a little bit misaligned, or should it be? Actually, I think it should be in line with the cache, and then this would also be yeah, now it looks good. Okay, so basically what we are going to do is we are going to give it some instructions about what needs to be done whenever somebody pushes to the repository. Okay, so the instructions are going to be inside the script, and these are basically just shell commands that we give that we use in the terminal anyway. Okay, so Firebase use default, so I'm going to tell it to use this instance of Firebase. Remember, default is our dev instance. Then we just run npm install, then we run ng build, and then Firebase deploy only hosting. So really the things that anybody who uses Firebase is very used to. And then I want these instructions to run only on master branch, because of course people could be pushing their own feature branches also. And secondly, I would like to specify here that this pipeline should run only when there are some changes in the source directory. So for example, somebody makes some change in the functions or anything, I don't want it to update hosting again for no reason. Okay, so the second pipeline is going to be deploy functions to dev. So now we have to, how do we deploy the cloud functions? So again, we just cd into the functions directory, and then npm install, and then of course we step back a little bit, and then Firebase use default, because we are going to be in the dev instance, of course. Firebase deploy only functions, so this will deploy all the Firebase functions. Okay, and then I want this to run on master branch only, and I want this to be triggered when something changes in functions and source folder. So not when somebody makes a change in the web folder or the source default folder. So now we are going to write instructions for deploying rules. The stage is going to be deploy, and the script will have Firebase use default, okay, and then Firebase deploy only firestore rules, and Firebase deploy only storage rules. Okay, and this will of course run only on master branch again, and the changes it's looking for are in the root directory. If we have any .rules file, I want this pipeline to trigger, so we'll say star.rules. Okay, looks good. Let's see the git status, and basically we have to validate this file, so we can cat it and get its contents, but I think the file name is incorrect. I think it should be .gitlab-ci.yml. so let me just rename this. Go .gitlab-ci.yml. okay, .gitlab-ci.yml. now it is correct. And let's see the contents. Basically there is a CI lint on GitLab, and if we paste our YAML file there, it will tell us if it is properly formatted or not, and that's of course necessary, since if we malformat it, we cannot keep pushing again and again to the repository. That would be, let me just make it a little bit bigger. Okay, and then sign in, and you'll have to go to let me just copy this first. Okay, and if you go to the CI/CD, there's a link called GitLab CI lint, so validate it, and now as you can see the syntax is correct, so we're looking good. And this is actually necessary because we can't keep pushing back and forth again and again just to validate the format. So let's add it and push it to the repository. Okay, it is pushed. Now let's check out the repository. What is it doing? Okay, so CI has been added, but this is the place where it shows a progress whenever a pipeline is running, and as you can see it's not showing anything. So this is because in this particular commit we did not make the changes in the files that we specified. So if we, for example, open the GitLab YAML again, you'll see that we have set up these pipelines to run only when, for example, the deploy hosting dev instance will run whenever source is changed, deploy functions to dev will run when functions are changed, and deploy rules to dev will run when rules are changed, and nothing is changed in this commit, which is why this did not run. Okay, so let's emulate a change by touching a file. We'll slightly modify one of the files in the source. So this is just the boilerplate code that comes with Angular. So let me just add something here, kind of, yeah. Okay, save it, and let's say git status. Okay, this file is modified. Add, commit, and and let's push it. And this time we should be able to see the pipeline running. So let's look at it again. Oh, there you go. So now you can see the pipeline is running, and let's see what it's doing. If we click on it, you'll see deploy hosting to dev. So only the deploy hosting pipeline is running, which is because we specified that we only want the hosting pipeline to run when hosting has changed. Okay, so now it's installing Firebase tools, and Firebase use default failed to authenticate. So if you remember, when the first time we were going to initialize the project, it gave us the same error. but we were able to log in because it was our own computer, but we can't do that on the remote machine. So what happens is that Firebase either looks whether you've logged in into the CLI or not, or looks for a environment variable. So this is an environment variable, for example. I mean, I'm sure you guys know, but for those who don't, Firebase looks for a Firebase token named environment variable, and you can see I don't have it in my environment as well, okay, in my local machine. So we can either supply that environment variable, or we can supply it the token itself. So Firebase use -- token and the token that we got. But now we need a login token for Firebase. So how are we going to get it? The way to get this token is we'll run Firebase login :ci. Okay, this will give us it will take us through the same process that we just went. So I'll just copy this link and I will open it in Chrome, and then we'll paste it, and let me just log in here, allow, and it's updated. Okay, so now it has given us this token. As you can see, success, use this token to log in on a CI server. Okay, so we'll copy this token and we will go to, let me just make this GitLab a little bit bigger. We'll go to settings and then CI/CD. Okay, and then we add a variable and we must name it Firebase _token. It should look exactly like this. Then we paste the token and we're going to protect the variable, because of course this token is almost like your password. So you can log in. I mean, if anybody gets a hold of this token, they can just log in. Okay, so protected token is only accessible in a protected branch. Okay, so we're going to protect the branch also, which is again settings and repository. So I'll protect my master branch. Okay, and now my branch is protected, so this branch will have access to the token in the CI. Now this is really important, because sometimes some people miss this and then they wonder why it wasn't working. Okay, so we're going to make some change again and push the changes. So let's go to Vim source app and this component, and I'll just go to the change that I made, and I'll just delete it, because of course this will change the document again. Okay, so let's write this file and git status. Okay, the file is modified. Let's commit this file and then we'll push it. Okay, so now it's pushing it. Let's go to the repository again. Okay, as you can see, the pipeline is running again, and of course this is all again only the hosting pipeline. So let's wait for it to finish. Okay, it's installing Firebase tools, and let's get rid of the terminal. Oh, okay, as you can see, so Firebase used default. This time it didn't give the authentication error. Why? Because now the environment has that variable that we have set up. Okay, so now it's building the project, and Firebase deploy only hosting, and there you have it. Okay, deploy complete. So far it looks good. Let's see if this thing actually has the our website still. It's hosting the site. So let's copy this URL and let's open Chrome, and I'm going to paste it here, There you have it, imaginary project app is running. So what it did is, when we pushed the changes, it just deployed them to Firebase, and this was again the dev instance, as you can see, imaginary project -dev -79451 web app. Okay, so this looks good. Let's try this with our cloud functions. Okay, so I'll cd into the functions directory, open vim, and I just close GitLab, and there is a function that's pre-included, so I'll just uncomment it. It's just a hello world function. So, and I'll also show you the console, so that when it gets deployed, we can actually see that it previously did not have any functions and then it got deployed. Okay, so let's see this. Okay, waiting for your first deploy, and here on the left side we have the functions modified. So if you do git status, you'll see that these files are modified. So we'll just add them and commit them. Before that, we'll just build them actually. Okay, no errors, and then let's just add and commit them. Added a cloud function, git push origin master. Okay, and of course I think we'll have to open GitLab also to observe the the pipeline itself. So let's open surf gitlab.com, and let me make it a little bit bigger. Okay, looks good. Sign in. And log in with Google. Okay, there we have the project, and we see that pipeline running also. So let's click on that pipeline. As you can see, deploy functions to dev. Only this pipeline is running because it matched the pattern that we gave it. Installing Firebase tools, and okay, so it cd'd into functions and then ran npm install and then took a step back, Firebase use, and then Firebase deploy only functions. So looks good so far. Oh, okay. Cloud functions deployment requires pay-as-you-go Blaze plan. Oh, of course. So now with the node 10, we need to have a paid account to deploy functions. I actually forgot that when I was recording this video. So I guess this is of course, and this test account that I created for this video is not paid, but you guys get the idea that this should work. Okay, alright. So now the next thing to do is, let me just close this and this one also. Okay, so next thing is we want to be able to deploy to the production instance also. Okay, and deploy hosting to release instance, and of course this is the deploy stage, and then we specify the commands in the script, which are going to be pretty much the same. So git use production this time, because previously we had git Firebase use default, so this is Firebase use production. So npm install ng build with a prod flag, okay, so that it uses the prod configuration. Firebase deploy only hosting, so it's going to go ahead and deploy the hosting. And now I'm going to specify that I want this pipeline to run when somebody supplies tags. Okay, so, and also of course deploying to production should be a little bit careful procedure. So we run all the the unit tests, and we run the end-to-end tests, so NGE to E. So if any of these things fails, it won't deploy it. Okay, so and this so far I think it looks good. Oh yes, one more thing would be to change the name of the image to Karma. Okay, this is necessary. Git add, git commit, and let's give it a name, updated gitlab-ci to deploy to production on tag push. Okay, and then let's just push the changes to master. Okay, and now I'm going to tag this release. Git tag, we don't have any tags. Let's call this v1.0. Of course, this is the first version that we are pushing, and let's open gitlab.com and imaginary project, and we have to make sure that this tag is also protected, because protected environment variables can only be used in tags. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a wildcard. So any tag that has v version and then some number or whatever after it will be protected. So let's see, we have only one tag now, and let's push the tag. So git push origin v1.0. okay, it has pushed. Let's close the terminal, head over to GitLab, imaginary project, and as you can see in this current branch there is no CI running, but the pipeline is basically running on the tag. So you can see this v1.0, this is the tag that we just pushed, and the pipeline is running. Okay, so let's open this, and npm install Firebase tools. It's installing the Firebase tools now. Firebase use production, npm install. Okay, and now it's running the unit tests. Cool, 3 success. Okay, that's actually really a good way of deploying to production. That we run all the tests, and now it's running the end-to-end tests. So of course the integration tests are going to see how things are working overall, and we can see now that it should display a welcome message. So this is good, which means the end-to-end test has passed, and now it is going to build it with the production configuration. So now it's deploying it, and looks like job succeeded. So this is the URL. Let's copy this. Let's head over to Google Chrome, and let's paste this. And there we have it. As you can see, the address is a production instance, and our site has deployed. Okay, so this is pretty much all there is in setting up Firebase with GitLab CI.